Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Here we go. Hey, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else. Welcome to the Mannerisms Show with Sackhead Shaun. I am your host, amazingly named Sackhead Shaun. We have a great show for you coming up today. I think it's a great show because I'd be a fool if I said I have a terrible show coming up for you today here on the SHR Media Network. But before we get into the fun stuff, we got some breaking news. The U.S. House of Representatives has officially voted Representative McCarthy from California as the majority leader for the House. That just came in off the wire here in less than 45 minutes ago. Once again, the United States House of Representatives has elected California Congressman McCarthy as the head or the majority leader of the House. For more information on this and any other news, stand by to the SHR Media Network and our wonderful coverage. If you didn't hear it today, we streamed, and I'll tell you, that anchor who streamed earlier, he was just dialed, that guy. But we streamed the president's speech today on Iraq. Dan Butcher from Pundit Press joined us, and we were very, very grateful for him to have his time put aside to spend with us. So that was wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And again, check out all the other great talent here on the shrmedia.com, SHR Media Network. A lot of great things going on, and it's only getting better. Now, to dispense with the stuff that I'm forced to say through contract, let's get on to the good stuff. What do we have today? Today we're going to talk about, quite simply, emergency preparation. Have you prepared for any sort of emergency? And, you know, you don't have to be a quote-unquote crazy prepper, as some people like to call them, to need to prepare. And you do need to prepare. Your house needs to be ready. If there's an emergency, and if you are the man of the house, and you don't necessarily have to be the man of the house, but if you're the man of the house, it is your responsibility. You have the man card in your wallet. It is your job to make sure that you and your family can survive in the event of an emergency. What type of an emergency? Anything from electricity loss, power outage, flood, tornado, hurricanes, gas explosion, who knows? Right up through invasion, if you want to go that far with it. We could be invaded, I guess. Some would say it's happening right now on our southern border. So you have to be prepared as the man in your house. So we're going to go through a pretty simple checklist, and this is the most basic. Listen, I'm going to expand on some of the things that I found on this checklist, and I think it's a pretty good checklist. And there are those people who will hear this list and say, oh, it's not nearly enough. I agree. It's not nearly enough, but it's a good start. And if you don't start, then you won't expand and make it better. Excuse me. So that's one of the things. Also coming up, we have our Jackholes of the week. We have two high school idiots who have gone way out of their way to get themselves voted as the Jackhole of the week. We're also going to issue our Platinum Man card, and I'm actually going to issue two this week. Both of them new Iraq War veterans, and I will tell you why. I'm sorry, one's an Afghanistan veteran, the other one's an Iraq War veteran, I believe. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes. That's going to come up at quarter of the hour. Quarter past the hour. We're starting a little bit later today than we usually do. So at 1:15 on the Pacific, you'll hear that. And the Jackhole of the Week will be at just before 1 o'clock, just before we go into our top of the hour break. All that and breaking news may occur. That's been just a day full of absolutely insane news. So like this whole week is going. So let's get underway. Let's talk about survival checklist and getting stuff ready for your house. And listen, folks, if you have small children, and I don't care where you live, if you have a family, if it's you and a dog, something to that effect, you need to make sure that your stuff is ready to go, up to and including your vehicle, maybe a plan, equipment, just stuff that you'll need to survive, and not just for a few days. While that is ideal, and I think that's what the recommendation is right now, what the recommendation is now from the American Red Cross and FEMA and stuff like that. But you should honestly have maybe a two-stage setup for your emergency kit. Maybe a short-term and then an expanded long-term if need be. I can tell you that, there may be a situation where you'll have to live out of your house for a few days without the luxuries of electricity or water or gas or something like that. And you'll just need to kind of shelter in place, as they call it. Or you may have to get the hell out of Dodge. And that's a reality. If you're in a flood-prone area or a tornado area, a hurricane area, then, you may need to get things ready, and you may need to hustle and get your family out. So all these things are important. Now, before you go out and you spend a ton of money on stuff around your house for this prep, let's look at a couple different things. First of all, how are you going to move it? Because we're going to have all this cool stuff and hopefully all this stuff that can save your life, but you need to move it. And there's a whole bunch of options out there. If you're a one person all by yourself, then maybe an oversized backpack. If you're maybe a family of three, you're going to need a little bit more space than that. There's these great totes that I found at Walmart, and this is for all your dry goods. It's not water sealed, though you could seal it with a tarp or a bag or something like that. They make bags big enough. But I think this is like a 40-gallon tote. It's got a set of wheels, an extendable handle. It's got locks on it. And I think it was about $15 is what I got it for. This, I feel, is just awesome to get all your stuff ready to go. It's got a good, strong metal hinge on the back. It is made of plastic. It is durable. It is pretty light. But the flip side of that is, you're not dragging all that weight. If you're in a vehicle and your vehicle breaks down, you have to take your stuff with you. You're not dragging all that weight. And you can actually tie stuff down to it. It's got a big enough top on it. It's long and, it's a rectangle shape. So you could actually tie things down on top of it, maybe things that don't necessarily need to be protected from the weather or the elements. So that would be good too. So let's start at the top of the list. What do you need? You as an individual or you as a family, what do you need to get going? Well, you got to put it all somewhere, so we said the box or the backpack. I recommend the box. Even if it's just one person, you can get all in the box and pull it behind you like a suitcase. A gallon of water per person per day. That's a lot of water. I think a gallon of water is like 4 pounds, roughly. So if there's three of you, you're automatically looking at 12 pounds right there for one day. And you should have enough to do 3. Now, what is the easiest way to do it? In my opinion, cases of water. You can go to Costco, you can get a case of water for like $5, the full-size case. And that's something where, you're not opening and closing the same gallon repeatedly. Yeah, it makes it harder to fill up once you drain out. But I worry about contamination. When you're drinking out of the same gallon jug of water over and over again, I worry about contamination. If there's an illness or if you guys are going through water and that thing's not screwed down tight, we all know standing floodwater especially, what kind of diseases can be in that. So you want to make sure that you're secure in that. And you could also fill up, if you have the time to fill up, you get those Camelbacks that have a good set of water into it, things like that. But you need a gallon of water per person per day. And now you may want to look at a second tote if you have more than one people, and especially if you have two strong adults, or even you can disperse your weight. So if you have a stronger adult and a lesser strong adult or whatever, you can both pull your own weight. And don't be afraid to get, if you have kids over the age of 4 or 5, don't be able to get them into the mix too. When you're planning for these emergencies and you're talking about this stuff, they're going to be interested. It's a good time to get them ready. You can throw that backpack on them. Maybe it's a light backpack. Maybe they only carry a few things for themselves because they're going to need stuff too while you're out of the house. So you need that gallon of water per person per day. Portable tent. A portable tent. Not a bad idea. You could easily do a makeshift tent if you have a tarp or a small tarp with you. But if you're going and you have the chance to plan ahead, and you should be planning ahead, you may want to bring that portable tent. Let's say you're in a flood and your house burns down. Or for whatever reason, you're in a tornado and your house blows down and you need somewhere to live for a few days. It may be in your front yard with a tent, believe it or not. Or and I know there's a lot of shelters and stuff like that, but maybe you're in the middle of nowhere, or maybe you have to evacuate to higher grounds. Or maybe a case like there was in Washington with that huge, massive mudslide. You're on the other side of the mudslide where help is, and they can't really get to you due to the weather, travel restrictions for the helicopters, etc. So a good, strong tent, enough to sleep as many people as you plan on having in your emergency group. For me, it would be 3. And we easily have a tent that would do that. It'd actually be 3 plus 2 dogs. I don't know if I'd worry about putting the dogs in the tent. Dogs are pretty hardy, as much as we like to believe they're not. Also excellent for area protection. So if you tie them outside the fence and there's an animal or something like that shows up, you'll know it ahead of time. A small tarp, a million reasons for a tarp. A million different reasons. You can get, I think, the 4x6 tarp. It folds up pretty small. And you can use that everything from washing your clothes. You can use that to, bringing stuff along with you in an emergency. Or if you say you need to forage for food, you can put it all on the tarp, tie it off, and bring it down. Use it to wash the food off in a river if you can, et cetera, et cetera. Put it under the tent. The tent gets a hole in it. A million different reasons to have a small tarp. This says a poncho on this particular list. Ponchos are really good, but if you have trash bags, the big black hefty trash bags, then you really don't need a poncho. You just need a good hat because you can throw that over you, and it's kind of dual purpose. 2,000 calories of healthy food per person per day. That's a lot of food. That's a lot of calories to be carrying around with you. I would recommend, and you could buy them regularly, is military MREs, meals ready to eat. Every single one has, and it may not be the best tasting food. It's not going to be gourmet. It's not as bad as it was 25 years ago. I'll tell you that. I have friends that still eat it whenever they go camping or whatever, and they were in the military and had to live off them before. So, but they also have a heating element in it, and get to know how to use that specific heating element. If you have hot food, it usually comes with a whole bunch of different stuff in it. The gum, I believe, has medicinal value in it. It has snacks in it. They come in really good pouches. They don't take up a lot of room. And if you have a camping kit or something like that, you can cook it up pretty quick. So I would recommend it. I think you can get them for about $70 for a box of 12 or something like that. And I believe 2 MREs a day will meet your 2,000 calories of healthy food per person. So you can do the math on that. A compact sleeping bag and bedroll, it says. This is where I always have a hard time with stuff like this. If you're in an emergency and you're in a tent because you don't have a place to live, or your house is blown away or whatever, if you're in the woods and you're a Wolverine, if you will, I don't think you're worrying too much about the bedroll. Yeah, it's nice to have that additional comfort, but it takes up a lot of space. Maybe if you have a little one with you, you may want to bring a small foam square for them to sleep on, because it'd probably be harder on them. They're not as they can recover, and they actually adapt much better than we give kids credit for. But It may be that little bit more comfort that they need. In a sleeping bag for one of the family, I would recommend knowing what your weather elements are. If you live in Nebraska, or even, I'll go Minnesota. If you live up in northern Minnesota or North Dakota, you're going to need a sleeping bag that probably goes down to minus 35 degrees or further. And to be able to keep you guys warm, and that's one per person. If you live down south or somewhere where it doesn't get as cool, then you could probably get away with a 25-degree sleeping bag at night for the most part. You may have to bundle up some nights here and there, but you'd be able to survive. So that's like your basic, I can live without anything else type of list. And now we go on. You want to worry about hygiene products. Toilet paper. I understand toilet paper. If you're going to be set in one spot for a long period of time, then you probably want to dig a little ditch for that. Baby wipes, even if you don't have a kid, these are really good to clean yourself up, wipe yourself down if there's not running water or even a river nearby to wash up in, because you also want to make sure that your morale is up, and that's why good food, and I'm going to throw in some snacks and stuff later, are really important. If you really are out for 3 days or 4 days, and you know, if all hell breaks loose or just that area is so inundated that the services to get there are hard, i.e. Katrina, etc., you'll have to do things to keep your morale up. So baby wipes, some deodorant. This is one of those things that if you buy a big Costco-sized thing of deodorant, you guys could all share it and probably get a week's out of it. A couple bandanas for the ladies to keep the hair out. If you're a guy with long hair, to keep the hair out of your face. Also good to wipe the sweat off if you're hiking or humping along. So that's good. Soap, obviously. Couple dust masks. And you have really variation on this. And this has to do with, maybe it's a dirty bomb or maybe it's a massive wildfire in the area. Who knows? And you have to take that respiratory protection. You can go to Home Depot and get the 35-cent respiratory mask, and that's pretty good. Or you can spend like $6 a piece, and you can get one that have a removable filter, and it really does a much better job of filtering out the problems in the air. Probably not probably not a bad idea. It's worth the space. Everyone can kind of carry their own. They're light. I think they fold up pretty well. This says potty bags. Again, it depends on your situation. I understand the whole when people are conservationists and they're like, oh, you can't poop in the woods. But, if this is an emergency situation, throw that out the window. Latex gloves, and this should be under the first aid portion of this, so I'm going to skip on that. Toothbrush and toothpaste. Again, it's one of those things where, you want to keep your teeth clean and you want to make sure you maintain your hygiene while you're out in the bush. But more importantly, you want to make sure that you kind of feel fresh. When you have those luxuries from home, and brushing the teeth is to a point a luxury, in my humble opinion. Even though it's a necessity medicinally, but when it comes to these emergency situations, the thought of being able to brush my teeth for whatever reason seems like a good idea. You get, especially if you've been eating MREs or coffee or whatever, and maybe you're eating some fruit, but you just got to get that gunky flavor out of your mouth. Or you don't have coffee in the morning, and you get to kind of refresh. I know I would lose it if I didn't have coffee, which is why coffee actually makes my food list. Coffee and a whole bunch of coffee filters. Coffee filters are flat. You can put them out nice and easy, and you can get a pound of coffee in there in a 1-gallon bag pretty easily. And you can make it a cup at a time, especially if you have some sort of river water or something like that you can decontaminate and boil up really well. May not be a bad idea. That's just me, because I will. If I ended up into the woods without coffee, somebody's going to get hurt. That's all I'm saying. And then for the ladies, feminine napkins, and that actually can also be used in first aid kit situations too. Speaking of first aid kits, roller gauze, medical tape, alcohol wipes, blood coagulant. They have Quick Clot now that you can buy everywhere. Gauze pad, painkillers if they're prescription. If not, honestly, I'm going to recommend having a couple flasks of alcohol to take with you, and I'll get to that. Not just rubbing alcohol, I mean booze. In a few seconds. Burn wounding cream and petroleum jelly or some sort of moisturizer and lubricant. I'm also going to add a tourniquet to that. You can get a small tourniquet that's fairly inexpensive that like they use on ambulances and stuff like that. I think that's a good idea. Sunblock, if you're in a situation where you're going to be in the sun all day, you forget how quickly heat illness takes upon us. And if we're not ready for it, especially if you're not hydrating like you normally would and you're not getting out of the sun like you want to be able to, sunblock might be a big, huge one to put in there. And, I would say, they say painkillers. I'm assuming maybe they mean like aspirin, headache relief, etc. Excedrin even. But I definitely think that's a good idea, especially if you're a caffeine drinker and you don't have readily available caffeine, coffee, soda, whatever. You will get the withdrawals. And if you're not bringing that stuff with you, you will need medicine that has caffeine in it. And I think Excedrin headache medicine has caffeine, so that might not be something to put along with you. But a whiskey, and everyone's going to say, medical whiskey, what? Say the worst does happen, and you're evacuated, and you're out in the woods, and someone in your party breaks an ankle or hurts their back or pulls something or whatever, and you don't have the access to medical services like you want. This is old school. This goes back to before the colonial days. Whiskey, and if you have a raging alcoholic in your group, you'll have to fight them for this, but whiskey or rum or whatever you like can be used to help offset some of the effects of medicine. It can also be used to clean wounds, believe it or not. It has a high enough alcohol content to do that. And honestly, after a couple days, if you really need a morale boost or something like that, it's always nice to have a good drink. You're not going to bring a 12-pack of beer or something like that. So it may be not bad to have a couple small flasks of that alcohol. And with all this stuff, folks, make sure that you're checking it every couple months for expiration dates, batteries, etc. So whiskey may not be a bad one to have. Band-Aids, maybe a couple ice packs. If you're going to have a big enough kit, you might as well get all that stuff going. Let's talk about some tools. I talked about some of the stuff I have. I have the M24 Tomahawk that's really good, and as well as the Annihilator Hammer. And those two that I talked about a couple weeks ago, those are great tools to have. The Annihilator Hammer is like 12 tools in one. Pry bar. It has splitting ability for wooden axes and stuff like that. You can use it for a water shutoff, a gas shutoff, so it does really good job with that sort of thing. As well as a hammer, which is what it's designed for. And that axe that I was telling you about, that's great for chopping down some lumber. And honestly, if you need a little bit of protection and you don't have your firearms with you or for whatever, not a bad idea to have. Pocket knife, simple knife. Swiss Army knife if you like it, folding knife, whatever you need. That's going to be for cutting small ropes, etc., etc. Length of rope, 550 cord, paracord is probably the way to go. It's lightweight. It's really strong. You can get a lot of stuff out of it. And I think you can buy about 100 feet of it for about $20. And if you find a way to roll that up, you can get that 100 feet, less than $20. You can get that 100 feet of rope tied in quick, and that's going to secure your tarps. That's going to help. Maybe if you break something in your tent and you have to find a way to string it, et cetera, it's always good to have that. Maybe you live where there's a lot of bears and you have to tie your food up off the ground to keep from attracting bears. Even in an emergency situation, you got to think of stuff like that. So not a bad idea. Duct tape, because you should never go anywhere without duct tape. Hand warmers, I would actually, those are good for your shoes and stuff like that if you're in a really cold environment. Hand warmers are a good idea. Also, make sure if you're in one of those environments, that goes under your clothing preparation. Your cold weather clothes, your wet clothes, your hot weather clothes, hats, gloves, etc. Make sure that you have everything you need. And I would plan on at least 2 pairs of clothes, if not 3, so you can always wash one or maybe hang it off your backpack or something to dry while you're wearing the other ones, because there's nothing worse than wearing dirty clothes. The only thing worse than wearing dirty clothes is trying to walk in wet chonies and underwear. It tears you up. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to be able to progress. This says a wire saw. Wire saw is really good to have. It's small. It folds up pretty quick, pretty easily. Not a bad idea to have. A self-powering flashlight. They have those flashlights that you can crank up and shake. Those are good backups. But you know what? You get yourself a good mag light and a couple pair of extra batteries. And there's other ones out there. There's Pelican makes a really good flashlight, a company called Pelican. Stinger makes a really good. So there's a bunch of good flashlights out there if you want it. 511, the 511 company makes a lot of uniform equipment. They have a whole bunch of great little flashlights that are single-A batteries that work pretty well. Self-powered radio, you can now look at solar-powered radios with the crank as well that kind of help you out. It's always good to have that information if you're in an emergency. Solar panels. Everybody has electronic everything nowadays. iPad, even if you don't use the GPS, you can store your maps on it. So if you need maps, it's there. Cell phone, computer, if you're going to bring that stuff with you, and listen, it's a new age, and this stuff isn't bad to have. You may want to keep a file in one of those things that have all your emergency contacts, what your preparation plan is, maps of the area that you'll need, maps to get where you're going, plan B, all your emergency phone numbers, and even things like coordinates to ranger stations if you're out in the middle of the woods, or coordinates to whatever, Red Cross stations, phone numbers, radio stations that you can tune the solar-powered radio to, because let's face it, most of us turn on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, which we're on both of those, by the way, here on the SHR Media Network, if you want to check us out. Quick plug. But radio stations, I could tell you that for the longest time, in my car, I couldn't turn on the local news station. So in the event of an emergency, I would have been looking for that like crazy. So little things like that you have to think about. List of doctor and family contacts I just covered. Spare money. Believe it or not, there are places in this world that still take cash, and there are people in this world that still carry cash. I am a big believer of cash, because for as long as you can. Who knows if the American dollar is going to be worth anything in the next 2 years, but as of right now it is, so that's what you should plan on. And we can talk about bartering items that you can bring with you that would work too. But, I honestly, I would say cash-wise, it may not be bad to do $100 a day for a week. So you may want to find a way to store $700 somewhere, or $1,000 if you have more people in your family. And I know that's hard to do. Money's tough, but you got to figure let's look at Power Grid alone. Power Grid goes down in your area. Say it's going to be down 3-4 days. And that's totally possible, depending on where you live. You will still be able to buy some dry goods at some stores. You won't be able to buy gasoline, so if you're going to maintain a generator or something like that, you have to prep your gas, and gas only lasts about 6 months now, so change it out every couple months. But you won't be able to use your credit card. You won't be able to go to the ATM and get cash out. So make sure you are ready for that. Make sure you have a bunch of cash that you can readily spend. I would also recommend not ever showing anyone, if you're in an emergency situation, that you have that much cash, unless you have a plan and you have defense in order. Now, let's talk about things that would barter. In case, let's say, a huge solar flare knocks out the electricity in the northern United States for a couple months, or EMP, electromagnetic pulse, something bad happens, an explosion knocks out power in half the country. It may get to the point that you'll have to barter, and I'm not saying that it's going to be, like end of days type thing, but you may need something from a neighbor 3 doors down that needs something as well. And, what can you barter with? Booze is a big one. You can always barter with booze. Most people enjoy a good drink, and especially if all hell's breaking loose, they may want that relaxation. So you can barter with booze. Bullets. Just remember, anyone you're bartering that's willing to barter in bullets probably has a gun, and you probably should too. But not a bad idea. Couple extra boxes of bullets, maybe a couple different calibers, depending on what you think. And that can go a long way. So those are good too. Cigarettes. Cigarettes. Probably the number one bartering tool on the face of the planet. It is the most commonly, quote-unquote, borrowed, as they say, item, even today, in the world. It's the one thing that most people will walk up to a complete stranger and ask for without a second thought. And the power of the cigarette goes a long way. Grab a carton of cigarettes. And if you're a smoker, grab 2. But grab a carton of cigarettes. That can actually save you a lot of time and a lot of money. Hey, we are up against a break. Wow, that first 30 minutes just flew by. So I'm going to take a break here. We can come back when we continue on with our list. As soon as we get back, though, I'm going to jump into the Jackhole of the week, because I was supposed to do that before the break, and I did not. Back in 3 here on the Mannerisms show here on the SHR Media Network.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Shaun and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
It's not the Sackhead Show. It's the Mannerisms Show with Shaun. I don't know how that slipped in there.
The SHR Media Network.
Radio.
There we go. Get rid of all that junk. That's my Wednesday night show. This is Thursday, damn it. And I will not have any of it. So we are going to be talking about more on the your little bailout bag or your emergency evacuation list. But first I want to talk about this week's Jackholes of the Week. And it's happened, this is a little bit more than a week ago, but it still qualifies. Police arrest 2 high school seniors in Roseville High School, Roseville, California, for setting fire to their graduation stage. 18-year-old Roy Loya and 17-year-old unnamed male, because he's a juvenile, were arrested on suspicion of arson, felony vandalism, and conspiracy. About 1:30 a.m. on Thursday, the night before the graduation, the night before the graduation, police responded and firefighters responded to the high school for a report of smoke coming from the stadium. There they found the temporary graduation stage burned in an extensive area of the synthetic turf, that is the football field, burned as well. Arson was suspected immediately. The high school graduation ceremony was set for Friday. These 2 idiots are in custody. I'm sure this is their version of a high school prank. Folks, I wasn't a big fan of high school. As a matter of fact, I despised my high school for the most part. And just because I just didn't really get along with a lot of people there. But I understood one thing, and that was the end game, was to get out with your diploma and hopefully not go to jail in the process. These 2 idiots decided they're going to take this prank a step further. Not only did they burn the stage, but they burned the field. Do you know how much those fields cost to fix? You're talking a couple $100,000 minimum. And they're not going to graduate. Instead of a certificate or a diploma, they got bail notices. I cannot tell you what is wrong with today's youth, but I can tell you as time goes on, I fear more and more for the well-being. So to Roy Loya and your little 17-year-old moron buddy there, I'm glad you 2 are in jail. I hope that they don't give you your diploma, and I hope that you're paying off that field for the next 20 years. Thank you, you 2. You are our Jackhole of the Week. Now, moving on. God, idiots. Folks, I'm not saying you should beat your children. I don't condone violence against children. I don't condone violence in general. But you know what? At some point, we in this country and the world need to have better control and invoke better morals to our children. And any kid that thinks this is okay, I want to have a conversation with the parent because I have a feeling that it's directly stemmed. That fruit doesn't fall far from the tree often. Moving on. So we're talking about our emergency list and our evacuation products and what we need to get out. I left off at cash for the most part, and I was talking about bartering if it actually gets that bad, what you'd need to barter. Cigarettes, booze, bullets, always a good idea. Silver, believe it or not, a lot of people still recognize the value of silver, even though in this country we got away from any standard for our finances a long time ago. But if you have silver on some level, that'll go far too. Always know the price of your silver. Gold, everyone thinks gold is better because it's shiny, but silver is a little bit more hardy. I think you get a little more bang for your buck, even though gold's technically worth more money. You're going to see silver maintain its value over a longer period of time. I think gold will fluctuate greatly. Not a financial expert, but that's just my opinion. So let's say you have a pet. You have a dog, 2 dogs, cat, ferret, bird. Maybe you're a falconer and you have a falcon. That's your job will be easy if you're in the woods because feeding him won't be too hard and he'll sit on your shoulder. However, say you have dogs. You need to plan for them too, unless you're going to be a complete scumbag and leave them behind to die. And at which that point, don't listen to the show and don't use any of the advice I give you. I hope you have a really hard time. But if you have your dogs or your cat, you have to plan for that too. Both are hardy animals. Cats have a tendency to live through everything. There's a reason they say they have 9 lives. They show up no matter what. Dogs are a little bit more pack-related, as cats are independent. So if you have a dog, they do kind of depend a little bit more on you, but I also, in my personal opinion, in this situation, you get more out of them. So you want to make sure you have your dog's food, and it depends on your dog's size and how much your dog eats a day. If your dog eats 3 cups a day and you're planning on a 3-day kit, a 72-hour kit, you're going to need 9 cups of food for the dog. Water, dogs have a better chance of filtering. They will drink water that would make us sick on average, so they can definitely drink out of the river. If you're not going to have water or something like that available, not flood water, don't let your dog drink flood water, but I'm talking about lake water, etc., stuff that they would drink on a regular basis anyhow. These, dogs have a tendency to drink out of everything that's not they're not supposed to drink of beyond the toilet. So, you could do that, but if you're in a dry location, if you're in a desert or you're in a drought or you're just a couple hundred miles from a lake or whatever, then you may want to consider bringing enough water for your dog to survive. And again, it depends on your dog's size as to how much water you will need for that animal to survive. So make sure you're taking care of your animals. Here's what you get when you bring your dogs. As long as they're not a complete do-nothing dog. I have one dog that's a complete do-nothing dog, and I have another dog who is pretty dialed in, Kona, my big lab. You get area protection. If you're camping and you're in the middle of the woods, and like I said, if the situation's bad enough that you had to evacuate, chances are other people had to evacuate. And they may not have prepared as well as you, but they know they can take things from other people. So even if you have your weapons with you, you could be Johnny on the spot with all that stuff. You could be a great shot. You can have the best firearms and the best tools to protect you and your family. But what good is it if somebody gets the drop on you? Dogs have a tendency, especially in heightened situations, when things are really bad, dogs have a tendency to really adapt and understand the situation well more than we give them credit for. So you're sleeping at night, and, especially if you did like a 2-day hike or something like that, and you're really exhausted and you're out of it, just sleeping like a log, your dog's going to be on alert, especially they're in a strange place. They're outside where they're used to sleeping inside. All these smells that are in the woods or wherever you are that are different from what they're used to. You have animals that have been through where you are most likely before. So dogs have a tendency to stay alert, and if they hear that noise or if somebody's coming up, they're going to let you know for the most part. Maybe you have a dog that's a trained attack dog, even better. So they are they're intimidating, and I'll give you that speech in a second. So for that reason alone, they're great to have. Dogs are intimidating, even though he may be a big, dumb chocolate lab. people look at my dog, and because he's very well disciplined, and I have all of his commands down, and they're in a different language because it scares people for some reason, and I think that's funny. People respond to that. And so say you're in a bartering situation where you have to go barter with somebody, and, you make the agreement, no guns. Okay, fine, we won't bring any guns, no weapons. You bring your dog with you, and that does give you that little bit of advantage. Plus, the best part about bringing a dog with you, in my opinion, in an emergency, is the morale thing. If you have a young kid, a child, that's going to be way more traumatic on them than you, only because they don't understand the situation. As I'm sure any parent out there knows, your kids just, they just can't grasp it. They're just not mentally developed enough until they're 7 or 8. Then they can start getting emergency stuff like that a little bit better. Some younger, but in general, you have a 3-year-old, they just think you're going on a vacation. They can't put the two together. So after a few days, they're going to wig out a little bit. And having that dog there, that's that reminder of home. And it's that kind of like that snuggle buddy. I know my little guy loves to hang on my dog and play with my dog and pet my dog. And, when you have kids with you and you're trying to keep morale up, dogs are a great way to go. And for you, too. I can tell you, for me, relaxation is sitting on my couch petting my dog. I enjoy petting my dog. It's relaxing for me. So, it's good for the adults as well to have that little bit of moral oomph, if you will. So dogs are a big thing to take care of. If you have your dogs, you take them with you. They are part of your family, in my opinion, and they serve a huge purpose down the line. So now let's talk about some things that are whatevers. Should you have them? Should you have them? Should you not have them? I talked about electronics earlier, and I talked about your cell phone or your iPad or something like that. I think that you should, get a waterproof case. I think it's a must. If you have a solar charger, and even if it's one of the ones that you, I know they have them now, are on the back of the iPad case, where it's like the impact cases that has a solar battery built in. It's such a part of our society, and we're so relying on them right now. Yes, you should have paper maps. Yes, you should have all this stuff written down on paper, your emergency plans and stuff like that. But, you can seal all that up in some plastic and leave it in the bottom of your tub or your case or whatever you're taking with you. And your iPad's light. If you have a good case on it, it's durable. Some of them are waterproof. And especially if you need maps while you're walking and moving, you're not trying to fold up a gigantic map. If it's got that solar power, it doesn't really take up much. You can charge it. So that's good stuff. I know a lot of people saying, you got to get away from it. You got to get away from it. Yeah, but I agree that we as a society need to rely less on electronics, including myself. I'm one of the worst people at it. However, while it's available, you can use it. And some things are really simple is, if you're in an area that's just devastated by a disaster, you're not going to get cell phone service or anything like that. But if you have to evacuate and all hell's breaking loose, you'll eventually be able to get that cell phone service, unless it's like an EMP or something like that. But even then, you may be able to get satellite connection out of it, and that may help you with your location and stuff like that. Plus, the good part is even if you don't have GPS connection, none of that stuff, if you have a decent mapping program on your, even if it's Google Maps or Google Earth or something that you download to the machine, don't rely on the ones that are web-based that you have to have an internet connection. Download your maps to your machine, and you can drop pins. Pins on the map, marker points. You can use it for points of reference. There's a whole bunch of great emergency mapping stuff out there that you can use. And that'll really kind of get you through. So I'm going to say yes for electronics. I'm going to say it's something that you probably should have on you, and it's something that you should maintain. Some other things, if you wear glasses, bring extra sets of glasses. Obviously, if they're reading glasses, then you have a good case on them. But if you're going to wear them around your head, it's not bad to have one of the little straps that hold them on your head so you don't fall, just in case you get in some rough terrain or wind or rain. Comfortable shoes and hiking boots. And try to, if you can, try to get a pair of each. If you're going to be doing if you're in a rugged area that you'd have to evacuate to, you want to have the boots because they're good for your feet, they're good for your ankle. But you also need somewhere to let those boots dry and something to wear on your feet. So flip-flops aren't a bad idea. I hate flip-flops personally out in public, but I can understand the need. Maybe some light sneakers or water socks. How about some fishing line and some a simple little, pocket fisherman or something like that. I'm not a fish eater per se, but if I had to survive, I would. Maybe some snare line, something to make a snare with. If you're running low on food and you got to do some hunting, snares aren't a bad idea. How about a kit of a book, or even again on your iPad, of a list of foods that are safe to eat in the wild and foods that aren't safe to eat in the wild, and everything from plants to animals or whatever, and maybe some ideas on what you need to cook it at, or what plants you can ingest that'll be good for you or make tea out of. It sounds silly, but if you can get your hands on some water, and maybe you can get some peppermint or spearmint, you can actually make a little tea, and it's a little bit of a pick-me-up, which I think is kind of, again, one of those big things. You don't get caffeine, but it's got a flavor to it. It's warm. You can ingest it. It gets your stomach full, and it does have some nutritional value. Mushrooms, there are some mushrooms in the wild that are safe to eat. There are some mushrooms in the wild that are not safe to eat. So get a book or download a program that helps you identify it, and do it area specific. See if there's one, again, if you live in Florida, see if there's one in Florida. Obviously, what snakes to avoid if you have poisonous snakes and stuff like that in your area, not a bad idea as well. And find out little tricks, how to keep certain animals away. If you're in bear country, obviously you hang your food up. Some people say that, you got to keep your fire burning all night. How about fire starting tools? They have those quick flints, something that you can keep in. They're small. Learn how to make a fire. Investigate how to make a fire. You can take your knife and cut some really small shavings, almost like pencil shavings, and learn how to prep the piece of wood with those pencil shavings, a little bit of a groove, and then use that striker, that flint and steel, and learn how to make a fire. Fire is going to be huge, especially if you're in a wet location, if you're in a chilly location, a cold location, if you need to signal for something. Fire is a big, big deal. We live and die by fire in this country. We have for years in this world, in our society in general. Fire is a big deal. Know how to make a fire. Know what to look for, what kind of leaves to use, or dried out wood versus green wood and stuff like that. I mean, once the fire gets hot enough, just about anything will burn. But when you're starting that fire, you want to use that dead, dried out wood, something that'll catch quick. It's going to burn fast, so you'll have to maintain it and secure it a little bit. But make sure you know how to get that fire going. How to purify water. Do you have water purification tablets? Do you have maybe an osmosis purification system? They have them that fold out, or that they look like a 5-gallon gas tank. If you're going really hardcore and you're gonna use your vehicle to evacuate, then you may want to look at getting one of those 5-gallon to 5-gallon osmosis water purifiers. Gasoline. If you're gonna take your vehicle and your vehicle dependent on your evacuation, and you have the time, make sure you have spare gasoline, or how far you can drive. And little suggestion, don't use anything that'll draw more gasoline. Mostly I think of the air conditioner. But don't let your car idle just to stay cool or whatever. Always worry about carbon monoxide maybe if you're in the snow. But I know on my Trailblazer right now, I can get about 315 miles on a full tank. So in order for me to go from here 350 miles, I get one full tank. The problem is who leaves their car full every single day? Not a lot of people. So make sure you have that spare gasoline in your house that you can fill up, maybe strap to the top when it's full, and go. Gasoline's a good bartering thing too if you have enough. I know in some states they limit how much gas you can store, and that might actually be a federal thing now. I know you're not supposed to do more than 5 gallons. But it may be worth, if you have a 20-gallon tank, it may be worth getting 4 or 5-gallon tanks, 5-gallon holders, especially, and just remember to recycle it on a regular basis. Cycle it through your lawnmower, or pour it into your car and refill it. Keep that gas fresh. Make sure you have gas stabilizer if you need it. Know how far you can go. Spare oil is big in your car if you're driving. Maybe a spare serpentine belt. You know where your spare tire is, how to change it. Especially if you have, like performance wheels or something ridiculous like that, or locking hubs or locking caps, make sure you know how to change your tire, and make sure that you know where you're going to pack everything in your car ahead of time, so when it comes time to go, you can just pack it, and then when you need to get it, you have it readily available. And if you're going to use your car, versus a tent, see if maybe you can sleep in your car versus the tent. It's a little bit more secure. You can lock the doors. You can block out the windows if you don't want anyone to see in, but then you can't see out. Things like that to remember. How many people you can sleep comfortably in it. I know in my Trailblazer, as long as I have the back seats down, I could probably legitimately sleep 4 or 5 people, as well as have a couple days worth of stuff in it. So all these things you need to keep in mind, but do some investigation. Check your lists. Know where you live. Know what you need. It's on you. Only you will help you to survive in emergency situations. You can't rely on emergency services because chances are they're just as devastated as you are. And they're people too, and they have families too. And I know a lot of our brave heroes who serve in public safety in the military do it for all the right reasons. But if they're trapped in their house or they have to evacuate or whatever, you may not get the services for a few days, and you may have to travel for them. And all these things are stuff that you should plan on. You plan on the absolute worst and hope for the best, but hope is not a battle strategy. And that's my recommendation is you know what you need and what to get out. Have a 3-day plan. Have a 7-day plan. Have a long-term plan. You never know. I mean, I know in California I'm not that far from a nuclear power plant. If that thing melts down and I got to go somewhere for a few months, you never know, right? I mean, these are all possibilities that we have to maintain. So make sure you know your area. Make sure you know your risks in your area. Make sure you know your strengths in your area. Make sure you know how you want to get there. You have alternative routes. Don't just rely on the major freeway because odds are that major freeway's down. Would you have to go off-road? If you do, can your car handle? Does it have good clearance? Is it four-wheel drive? All these things, it's on you and nobody else to make sure of. And you want to protect your family. You want to protect your loved ones. And you want to protect yourself. And you can't do that if you don't have a plan. So that is my list on how to stay alive in an emergency situation. That's just the beginning. I mean, you can expand on it. You go through it and decide exactly what you need. If you need camping cook sets, great, this, that, and the other thing. Maybe you have a huge pickup truck, and there's only you and your wife, or you, your wife, and a kid, and you can get a ton of stuff in there so you're living more comfortably, almost like you have to move. Have a plan. Get your crates ready. Decide how you want to put your crates in, so the stuff you use regularly up front and the stuff you don't use regularly is in back. But at the end of the day, it's nobody else's responsibility in this world to take care of you and your family but yourself. Do not listen to other people tell you that, oh, government will be there for you. And this isn't an anti-government statement. This is they may not be able to do it statement, just based on whatever the tragedy is. So it's on yourself, and you need to do it. And that's my word of advice here on the Mannerisms Show with Sackhead Shaun. Now, we have 8 minutes left in the show, and I want to get through two. When it comes to the Platinum Man card, I hate to just throw them out there like this because, it's a special thing to me. I issue these for a reason, and I issue these because I think these are men that, or sometimes women, that absolutely deserve recognition. And I'm going to go with two right now. And the first one I'm going to go with Iraq War veteran J.R. Salzman. He's at J.R. Salzman on Twitter. He's an amputee, wounded warrior, and he has been very outspoken about what's going on currently with Iraq, the VA hospital, the return of Sergeant Bergdahl, and the exchange for the prisoners. But, one of his quotes or tweets to President Obama is, why did you throw our sacrifices away? Meaning the sacrifices of American soldiers and American military personnel that lost their lives, that were injured in Iraq. He's gone at the president, and he's taken some hits for it. Believe it or not, there are people out there who are putting this back on Mr. Salzman, an American hero, a veteran, somebody who served his country with pride and honor, and they're daring to put it back on him. And even some people blame him for being an amputee because he wasn't fast enough and whatnot. Mr. Salzman is using this recognition in a positive way. He's taking that fight. He's standing up for those veterans. Doesn't matter how you felt about the Iraq War, right or wrong. You can't turn and look at people like Mr. Salzman and say that he deserved that or anybody deserved what they got. I understand, and I've said this before, I know when veterans, we don't do drafts. Veterans aren't forced into action. They sign up for it. It's a volunteer military. That doesn't exchange or belittle the courage that it takes to do it, the sacrifice it takes to do it, just the damn gumption it takes to put on that uniform and go over and defend our nation and our values because you're told to, whether you agree or disagree with the war you're about to get into. Those men and women are heroes that do that. And I believe, I absolutely applaud J.R. Salzman. He's got one of my Platinum Man cards this week for taking on President Obama and this horrible, horrible events that are going on in Iraq right now with the ISIL and the fact that we've allowed that to happen. So Platinum Man card number 1 this week goes to you, J.R. Salzman. And again, I salute you, sir, for your service, and we all do here on the SHR Media Network. It's people like you that help us sleep at night. My number 2 card this week, and because this just happened, I absolutely have to do it. The Platinum Man card number 2 this week goes to William Kyle Carpenter, a United States Marine corporal who, back in 2010, jumped on a grenade to shield a fellow Marine from the blast. Let me rephrase that, folks. He jumped on a grenade to shield his comrades from the blast. Think about that for a second, the amount of courage, the amount of, the balls that it takes to do that, knowing that it could kill you. That's exactly what William Kyle Carpenter did. He jumped on that grenade back in 2010 in a firefight in Afghanistan, and he was given up for dead. He then spent 2.5 years in a hospital as he tried to work with doctors to rebuild his entire body. And after all that, this was what he said about being in the hospital for 2.5 years after jumping on a grenade for a comrade. I look back and I actually very appreciative. I had those 2.5 years because those years put things in perspective more than a whole lifetime of things could if I wasn't there. Folks, these are words of greatness, just so you know. Here's a guy who jumped on a grenade, ended up 2.5 years in a hospital, and then turns around and makes a comment like that. I look back and I'm actually very appreciative. I had those 2.5 years because those years put things in perspective more than a whole lifetime of things could if I wasn't there. You want to talk about somebody making the best out of a situation, somebody having the balls and the strength to go on and turning it into a positive? William Carpenter, you have done just that. Today, on Thursday, less than an hour ago, Corporal Kyle received the Medal of Honor. He's one of the 8 surviving 8 members of the military alive to receive the members of Medal of Honor. Excuse me. The eighth living veteran of U.S. combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. The incident happened originally in the Helmand province of Afghanistan, November 21st, 2010, while he was serving as a machine gunner. This is one of the reasons that when you see a member of our military walking down the street, you shake their hand. And I know a lot of them are shy about it. And the more and more you do it, the more shy they get because there's almost a sense of embarrassment because we don't understand that for them, they don't look at it like greatness, folks. They don't look at it for the most part like they're doing us a favor, even though they are. They're doing it because it's their duty to do it, and they love to do it. So for them, yeah, they do get a little embarrassed. And I had a friend of mine in the military who said sometimes he gets sick of it just because he's trying to go somewhere, but he always appreciates it. And it really gives him a good feeling when he was in uniform walking down the street going from A to B when somebody would stop him and thank him. You share those good feelings. You give those good feelings to our men and women, our heroes in this country that sacrifice for you every single day. People like Kyle Carpenter, people like J.R. Salzman, just heroes that go so far beyond in being such a great example for this country of what a hero is and what a hero does and who a hero is. You two gentlemen earned this Platinum Man card, not only from me, but from our entire nation. I thank you. I appreciate you, and this country will honor you and the sacrifices you've made. God bless you all. We will see you next week here on the Mannerisms Show, back at our regular time at 12 p.m. Pacific on Thursday afternoon. Check me out Wednesday night on the Sackheads Radio Show, 8 p.m. Pacific. Later on today, you're going to check out the Evan Miller Report at 4, followed at 6 o'clock by the Exceptional Conservative Show. I am your host, Shaun, here on the Mannerisms Show. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next week.
Listening to the SHR Media Network.